Hello everybody, today we are going to see about the maternal pelvis, boundaries and the various diameters of the maternal pelvis which is of obstetric significance. The knowledge about maternal pelvis is very much important to know about the mechanism of labor. So let's get on to the topic. Okay, the maternal pelvis is divided into false pelvis and true pelvis. The boundary which is dividing the false pelvis from the true pelvis is known as linea terminalis. Now let's see about the boundaries of linea terminalis. It is formed by the 9 points on the either side of the pelvis. Anteriorly it begins from the pubic symphysis, pubic crest, pubic tubercle, pectineal line, iliopubic eminence, iliopectineal line, sacroiliac articulation, anterior border of the ala of the sacra and the sacral promontory. These 9 points on the either side of the pelvis forms the linea terminalis. The part above the linea terminalis is known as false pelvis. The part below the linea terminalis is known as the true pelvis. And the true pelvis is of obstetric significance. Let's tell the boundaries of the linea terminalis again. Anteriorly it starts from the pubic symphysis, pubic crest, pubic tubercle, pectineal line, iliopubic eminence, iliopectineal line, sacroiliac articulation, anterior border of the ala of the sacra and the sacral promontory. This on the either side forms the linea terminalis. So this part is known as false pelvis. The part below the linea terminalis is known as the true pelvis. And true pelvis is of obstetric significance. Again, we are going to see three parts of the true pelvis. True pelvis is again divided into pelvic inlet, mid pelvis and the pelvic outlet. Mid pelvis is also known as the plane of the least pelvic dimension. We will see why it is known as the plane of the least pelvic dimension in the upcoming slides. Now we are going to see about the boundaries of the pelvic inlet. Pelvic inlet is anteriorly bounded by the pubic symphysis and the horizontal rami of the pubic bones, laterally by the linea terminalis and posteriorly by the sacral promontory and the ala of the sacrum. Anteriorly by the pubic symphysis and the horizontal rami of the pubic bones, laterally by the linea terminalis, posteriorly by the ala of the sacrum and the sacral promontory. Now we are going to see what are all the diameters of the pelvic inlet. We are having three diameters of the pelvic inlet. Pelvic inlet has an anteroposterior diameter, a transverse diameter and an oblique diameter. We are going to see the anteroposterior diameter of the pelvic inlet. Again in anteroposterior diameter we are having three conjugates: anatomical conjugate, obstetric conjugate and the diagonal conjugate. The anatomical conjugate is measured from the superior border of the pubic symphysis to the sacral promontory, whereas the obstetric conjugate is measured from the midpoint of the posterior surface of the pubic symphysis to the sacral promontory. The diagonal conjugate is measured from the lower border of the pubic symphysis to the sacral promontory. Obstetric conjugate is from the midpoint of the posterior surface of the pubic symphysis, whereas the anatomical conjugate is from the upper border of the pubic symphysis. Diagonal conjugate is from the lower border of the pubic symphysis. The anatomical conjugate measures about 11 cm, whereas the obstetric conjugate measures about 10 cm and the diagonal conjugate measures about 12 cm. The measurable conjugate is that of diagonal conjugate. Let's see how. Consider the patient to be in the lithotomy position by doing a per-vaginal examination. I can measure the diagonal conjugate from the lower border of the pubic symphysis to the sacral promontory. After measuring the diagonal conjugate, I can subtract 2 cm to get the obstetric conjugate and I can subtract 1 cm to get the anatomical conjugate. Of these three conjugates, the obstetrically significant conjugate is that of the obstetric conjugate, which measures about 10 cm. This is the anteroposterior diameter of the pelvic inlet. We should you should know about the three conjugates: anatomical conjugate, obstetric conjugate, and the diagonal conjugate. The next thing is the transverse diameter of the pelvic inlet, which is the farthest point between the linea terminalis, and it measures about 13 centimeter. The last thing is the oblique diameter. The oblique diameter is measured from the sacroiliac articulation to the iliopubic eminence of the opposite side. Sacroiliac articulation of one side to the iliopubic eminence of the opposite side. This is how you should measure the oblique diameter of the pelvic inlet. According to the side of the sacroiliac articulation, the oblique diameter is named accordingly. If it is measured from the right sacroiliac articulation, it is known as the right oblique diameter. When it is measured from the left sacroiliac articulation, it is known as the left oblique diameter of the pelvic inlet. So we are having anteroposterior diameter, transverse diameter, and the oblique diameter in the pelvic inlet. See, this anatomical conjugate measures about 11 centimeter, obstetric about 10 centimeter, and the diagonal conjugate about 12 centimeter. The measurable conjugate, clinically measurable conjugate, is that of the diagonal conjugate. Next, we have seen about the transverse diameter, which measures about 13 centimeter, and the oblique diameter of the pelvic inlet is about 12 centimeter. So the largest diameter in the pelvic inlet is known as the transverse diameter. Now let us see about the mid-pelvis, boundaries and the diameters of the mid-pelvis. Anteriorly, the mid-pelvis is bounded by pubic symphysis. Laterally, it is bounded by the ischial spines, and posteriorly, it is by the tip of the sacrum. This forms the mid-pelvis. Pubic symphysis, laterally by the ischial spines, posteriorly by the tip of the sacrum. Again, we are having three diameters in the mid-pelvis: transverse diameter, anteroposterior diameter, and the posterior sagittal diameter. Let's see about the anteroposterior diameter. Anteroposterior diameter of the mid-pelvis is measured from the pubic symphysis to the intersection of the second and the third sacral vertebra. This is the anteroposterior diameter of the mid-pelvis. The transverse diameter is measured between the two ischial spines. Okay, the anteroposterior diameter from the pubic symphysis to the intersection of the junction of the second and the third sacral vertebra, which measures about 11.5 centimeter. Whereas the transverse diameter of the mid-pelvis is between the two lateral boundaries, that is the ischial spines, and it measures about 10 centimeter. And we have one more diameter known as the posterior sagittal diameter of the mid-pelvis. It is measured by the intersection of the both anteroposterior and the transverse diameter. The point of intersection to the tip of the sacrum. The posterior part of the intersection is known as the posterior sagittal diameter, and it measures about 4.5 centimeter in the mid-pelvis. These are the three diameters of the mid-pelvis. Now let's see, there are some clinical significance of this plane of least pelvic dimensions, that is the mid-pelvis. What are those obstetric significance of this mid-pelvis? As we have seen, the transverse diameter of the mid-pelvis is just 10 centimeters. So this is the narrowest part of the entire pelvis. So if a baby could cross the mid-pelvis, it is the probability of a normal vaginal delivery is more. So this is the narrowest part of the pelvis. This is the first clinical obstetric significance of the mid-pelvis. This is the narrowest part. And the second one is roughly, it indicates this is the place where the origin of levator ani muscle begins. The third one, whenever we are going to give labor analgesia, the pudendal nerve block is given at the level of mid-pelvis. Number 4, the mid-pelvis oda boundary la we are having ischial spine. This ischial spine indicates station 0. Whenever the baby's head is at the level of ischial spine, it is indicated as station 0. When it is above the ischial spine, it is told as -1, -2, -3, and when it is below, it is said as +1, +2, and +3. So the ischial spine indicates the station 0. Then the curve of the sacrum, the forward curve of the sacrum begins in the mid-pelvis. These are the obstetric significance of the mid-pelvis. The first one, this is the narrowest part of the pelvis, the origin of the levator rami muscle, then the pudendal nerve block during the labor analgesia, the forward bend of the sacrum begins here, and the station 0, the ischial level of ischial spine indicates the station 0 in the pelvis. Now we are going to see about the pelvic outlet. Again, the pelvic outlet is bounded by anteriorly by the pubic arch, laterally by the ischial tuberosities, and posteriorly by the tip of the sacrum. Anteriorly by the pubic arch, laterally by the ischial tuberosities, posteriorly by the tip of the sacrum. Again, we are having 3 diameters in the pelvic outlet: anteroposterior diameter, transverse diameter, and the posterior sagittal diameter. The anteroposterior diameter is measured from the lower border of the pubic symphysis to the tip of the coccyx. Lower border of the pubic symphysis to the tip of the coccyx, and it measures about 13 centimeter. The transverse diameter is measured between the 2 ischial tuberosities. And again, the posterior sagittal diameter is from the point of intersection of the anteroposterior diameter and the transverse diameter to the tip of the coccyx. From the point of intersection to the tip of the coccyx, the posterior part, it is known as the posterior sagittal diameter, and it measures about 7.5 centimeter. Anteroposterior diameter 13 centimeter, transverse diameter of the outlet between the 2 ischial tuberosities measures about 11 centimeter, and the posterior sagittal diameter measures about 7.5 centimeter. So the largest diameter of the pelvic inlet is transverse diameter, whereas the largest diameter of the pelvic outlet is anteroposterior diameter. So the head of the baby enters the pelvic inlet through transverse diameter, and it rotates and it comes to anteroposterior diameter in the outlet, and then it gets delivered. Okay, now let us see an interesting phenomenon called waist space of Morris. What is waist space of Morris? See, a well-flexed head. The circumference of the well-flexed head will be around 9.5 centimeter. Consider the head of the baby to be a ball. A well-flexed head, a ball of circumference 9.5 centimeter, has to be delivered through this pelvis. So, what is this waist space of Morris is that the space between this pubic arch and the head of the baby during the delivery. This space is known as the waist space of Morris. Usually, whenever we have a wide pubic arch and then the angle of the pubic arch is obtuse angle, the waist space of Morris will be just 1 centimeter in a very good pelvis, which allows for a normal vaginal delivery. When the head enters and it delivers, the waist space of Morris will be just 1 centimeter. Consider it to be a narrow pelvic arch. It is very narrow. The head will be like here. So the waist space of Morris is increased. So this increased waist space of Morris indicates it is not a good pelvis for the normal vaginal delivery. So a very good pelvis, the waist space of Morris will be just 1 centimeter. This is the clinical significance of waist space of Morris. Next, we are going to see about classification known as Caldwell and Molloy's classification of maternal pelvis. There are 4 types of pelvis according to Caldwell and Molloy's. It is gynecoid pelvis, anthropoid pelvis, android pelvis, and platypelloid pelvis. And we are going to see what are all the differences in these pelvises in inlet, mid-pelvis, and outlet. First, we will see the differences of the inlet. Gynecoid pelvis. Gynecoid pelvis is almost, the inlet of the gynecoid pelvis is almost round in shape. So, the anterior segment and the posterior segment will be equal. Android pelvis. The inlet of the android pelvis is almost triangular in shape. The posterior segment is smaller than the anterior segment and there is anterior narrowing. whereas the anthropoid pelvis is anteroposteriorly oval. So both the anterior and the posterior segments will be increased. Whereas in platypeloid pelvis, the inlet is transversely oval. So both the anterior and posterior segment will be reduced. This is the differences between all the four types of the pelvis. The inlet. And then one more thing what we have to look for in the inlet is the sacral angle. The sacral angle is more than 90 degree and it will be well curved in a gynecoid pelvis. This curve begins in the mid pelvis. The sacral angle will be more than 90 degree and it will be well curved in the gynecoid pelvis. Whereas in anthropoid pelvis it will be more than 90 degree but it will be long and narrow. Whereas in android pelvis the sacral angle will be less than 90 degree. In platypeloid again it will be more than 90 degree but it will be short and straight. These are the 3 points where you should know the differences between these points in the 4 types of pelvis for pelvic inlet. Next we are going to see about the cavity. In mid cavity, we are going to see 2 points. One is the sacrosciatic notch and the side walls of the pelvis. How are we going to differentiate these 2 points in all the 4 pelvis? See, the sacrosciatic notch. The sacrosciatic notch is wide and shallow. Wide and shallow in gynecoid, whereas it is narrow and deep in the android pelvis. Again, in anthropoid, it is wide and shallow. Again, in platypeloid, it has become narrow. So, in gynecoid and in anthropoid, the sacrosciatic notch is wide and shallow, whereas in android, it is narrow and deep. And let's see about the side walls. The side walls is divergent in gynecoid, anthropoid and platypeloid, whereas in android, see, the side walls are convergent. In all the other types of pelvis, the side walls are divergent, whereas in android pelvis, it is convergent. See, this is the difference among the 4 pelvis in the pelvic cavity, that is the mid pelvis. Now we are going to see the differences between these pelvises in the pelvic outlet. Again, in pelvic outlet we have to look for ischial spines. Ischial spines will be prominent in the android pelvis, whereas it is non-prominent in all the other 3 types of pelvis. And we have to look for the pubic arch. This is the pubic arch. We have to look for the pubic arch. Pubic arch will be well curved in the gynecoid, anthropoid and platypeloid pelvis, whereas it will be straight in the android pelvis. And we should look for the subpubic angle. This is the subpubic angle. Subpubic angle will be wide in the gynecoid pelvis, whereas it will be narrow in the anthropoid and android pelvis, and it will be very wide in the platypeloid pelvis. And you have to see for the bituberous diameter. Bituberous diameter is normal. Normal means usually it admits 4 knuckles. The bituberous diameter will admits 4 knuckles. This is the normal bituberous diameter. It is normal in the gynecoid pelvis, whereas it will be short in the anthropoid and android pelvis, and it will be very much wide in the platypeloid pelvis. See, the subpubic arch is well curved in the gynecoid pelvis. You have to look for the subpubic arch and the subpubic angle in the pelvic outlet. But in android pelvis, it is very narrow and straight. These are the differences to be known among the 4 types of pelvis. Okay, these are the various boundaries and the diameters of the maternal pelvis. You should know about these diameters of the maternal pelvis to understand the mechanism of labor. In upcoming video, we will see about the diameters of the fetal skull and the mechanism of labor and the stages of labor. Hope it helps. If you have any doubt, you can ask me in the Insta at obsmadeeasy, or else you can mail me at yamni.ravichandran1994 at gmail.com. Thank you.